What's going on, everybody? Welcome back, and today we're going to be reviewing one of my favorite rides, Mr. Freeze Reverse Blast. Anybody that's ever watched any of my vlogs or any of my reviews when I go to Six Flags Over Texas, I always give this ride high praise. I did a review a couple months ago, but I kind of wanted to redo it because I kind of felt like the review was too long. It was almost 20 minutes long, so I kind of wanted to go back and redo it to kind of get a better review of it. Six Flags Over Texas and Six Flags St. Louis both feature Mr. Freeze Reverse Blast. It's probably a premier ride there, and it's kind of funny you would say that because it's manufactured by Premier Rides. No pun intended. It's a shuttle launch coaster. The total height of this ride at the vertical spike is 218 feet with a 194-foot drop, reaching top speeds of 70 miles per hour with 1,300 feet of track, with one inversion at the top hat, which the top hat is about 150 feet tall. The ride debuted in 1998. It was announced by Six Flags Over Texas that it would be added to the park in 96. It was gonna, open in 1997 to coincide with, Batman and Robin's release. But the LIM launches, surprise, surprise, caused the ride to be delayed until 1998, where it finally opened. When the ride first opened, they had the worst possible restraints in the history of mankind. They had oldest ever restraints on the launch coaster. So that was really bad. And due to the general public complaining about the ride being extremely rough and brittle on the shoulders and stuff, in 2002 they would come along and remove the over-the-shoulder restraints to replace them with lap bars. These same type of lap bars are also on Poltergeist at Six Flags Fiesta, Texas. It's just a lap bar with a seat belt on the side. And it's actually pretty comfortable, and they've even got shin guards at the bottom that are very, very comfortable. You hear that, Gerstlauer? You should, take mind of this. In 2007, the ride was repainted with red track with dark blue supports. The ride at Six Flags St. Louis is complete opposite. And then when the ride initially opened, it wasn't called Mr. Freeze Reverse Blast. It was called Mr. Freeze. So the trains would launch forwards, and when you got to the 218-foot vertical spike, you would run the course backwards. But in the season of 2012, everything was flipped around. So the riders launched backwards and did the top hat backwards, and then ran the second half forwards. And then it got the name Mr. Freeze Reverse Blast. This is by far probably one of the greatest rides at Six Flags Over Texas. It is by far the most intense ride at Six Flags Over Texas. The theming of this ride, as we walk into the queue, the theming of this ride is actually not too great, but it's not too bad either. They're theming to the old Mr. Freeze and Batman that you've probably seen that came out in the 90s. They've even a Mr. Freeze sitting up at the top, the Arnold Schwarzenegger Mr. Freeze sitting up at the top in the station itself. It's fairly in the summertime. It can get a bit muggy in the queue line. I know with it being Mr. Freeze, you figured that they'd have AC in that sucker. Sometimes it works, sometimes it don't. So you're kind of just taking a chance on it. The queue line on this ride gets pretty insane. It gets pretty long, not going to lie to you. I've seen this line go all the way out the entrance. And anybody that's ever waited in Mr. Freeze's queue line knows how long that queue line is. It's pretty long. It's pretty insane. So all the way out the entrance means it's a pretty long wait. I ride this thing at least 3 times every time that I go to the park. It's definitely recommended to ride. If you are not into intense rides and you're not into height and speed and intensity, this ride probably is not the ride for you. Although I would recommend that you try to get the courage up to be able to at least try to ride it, so that way you can experience it at least once. The ride restraints on the ride, like I said before, they're lap bars, so they're fairly comfortable. I've never had any issues with getting stapled into that seat because of how they click down. I've never had any feelings, no problems with feeling like I was going to fall out. So the ride restraints, I think, are really, really good. They're not too constricting, but they're enough to just keep you in your seat type of thing. They're there to pretty much, and they do their job. The funnest part of the ride for me is probably the top hat, the 218-foot top hat where you're just sitting in the back. This, in my opinion, is probably a back seat ride. When you walk into the station, you want to go all the way down to the end to where you're legit at the beginning of the launch tunnel. And you're going to sit in the back. When you do that and you take the 218-foot top hat, you'll be at the tallest point. 218 feet, anything over 200 feet is considered a hypercoaster, but I don't really believe that Mr. Freeze Reverse Blast fits into that category due to the fact that it's a closed circuit course. So it's not really, it wouldn't be considered a hypercoaster, although the 218-foot top hat is probably pretty crazy. Also sitting in the back when you're coming back or after the initial launch. But I notice it more when you're coming back and you go off the 150-foot top hat. Coming back, you get loads of hang time sitting in the back, whereas sitting in the middle or the front, you're going to get some, but you kind of just go over it fairly quickly. But in the back, you kind of just meander there for about a second and a half, maybe even 2 seconds. It's definitely pretty noticeable. And it's definitely more exciting when you go through the top hat with your hands up in the air because you can just feel your body just completely come out of your seat and you can get that hang time. If you're into air time and hang time type of thing, that element right there is really, really good. The bank turns, nothing too crazy. I don't really like the LIM launches because the reason I don't really too much care for the LIM launches is because a lot of times they break down quite frequently. They break down quite often. They're out of date, and I'm not sure if Six Flags Over Texas and Six Flags St. Louis is actually going to implement trying to invest in some better launch systems because I think it's going to make the rider experience possible. When we went to Six Flags St. Louis, the Mr. Freeze was down like for half the day because the launch system was messing up. The ride initially got delayed because of the launch system. Poltergeist has experienced some of the same thing. They use the same launches as Mr. Freeze, and they've had the same issues with it. So I'm not sure, long term down the road if Six Flags is actually going to implement, trying to get a more up-to-date launch system for this ride. This ride lasts about from the moment you get strapped into your lap bar to the moment you come back into the station. It's legit probably about a minute long. The launch is pretty smooth. It's pretty up there. You get like 0 to 70 in 3.8 seconds. So it's definitely a noticeable launch. It's definitely better than Poltergeist's, that's for sure. I will say that. Poltergeist's launch is cheeks. Mr. Freeze's launch is great. So big difference in the two. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that you're launching backwards. So it kind of makes it a lot more exciting. I've rode this ride with countless people that have never ridden it before that have kind of like really nervous and really scared to get on the ride. When they got on the ride, I could tell them the same thing. I said, don't be scared. It's just fun. I said, it's just fun. Just have fun. I said, that's what it is. So 45 seconds to a minute long. You're about 45 seconds in the course altogether. So about an extra 15 seconds. The thing that really impressed me the most about this ride, the very first time I walked in the ride, was the switchback. Now, if anybody doesn't know what a switchback is, the switchback is when you can bring 2 cars on one track. And the switchback will allow you to simultaneously swap both tracks back and forth to, there's another ride at Dollywood in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee that does the same concept, except they only do it with, I think they do it with one train. But they'll load the train at the station, and then they'll have a switchback to load it onto the track. It's called Powder Keg. It's a launch coaster. It's not a premier launch coaster or anything, but it's kind of like the same concept. Both of the trains are inside the station. One will move towards the launch track. The other one will move back and load, and they just swap out back and forth. So it's pretty cool. I thought it was pretty dope seeing it for the first time, and definitely really caught my eye and impressed me. When I first rode the ride for the first time, there's no airtime in it, but it didn't really need it because the ride itself is just so great without the airtime, without having the airtime, because it's a closed circuit course and it's just 100% intensity from start to finish. You lose absolutely, there's no buzz kills throughout this ride. Once you start the ride, it's exciting, and the excitement doesn't stop until you come back into the station. It's like 100%, probably, and that's why it's probably slated to be the best ride at Six Flags Over Texas and Six Flags St. Louis, is because exciting start to finish. No stops, no mid-course breaks, no trim breaks, no nothing, just pure and simple intensity. And someone like me that's a coaster enthusiast, we love intensity, and we love fast stuff. We love stuff that goes fast, we love stuff that goes high, we love stuff that's intense, and this ride has all of it. It has intensity, it has, it's got the speed is kind of meh, because it only goes up to about 70 miles per hour, but it is Six Flags Over Texas, so 70 miles per hour is probably a good median for it. But overall, I think it's definitely one of the top 3 rides in Texas by far. I wouldn't say that it's as good as some of the other rides in Texas, but that is something for another video. If you guys are new here, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications. You'll be helping me hit my goal of 100 subscribers. You don't have to worry about it. It's completely free, completely harmless, takes 2 seconds. Hit the subscribe button. If you want to help support the channel anymore, smash that like button. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.